Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 9. Snake symbolism. You may not recognize the caduceus symbol by name, but you'd probably know it if you saw it. It consists of two snakes intertwined around a winged staff and is a popular medical symbol in the United States, where its use dates back to the late 19th century. But the caduceus symbol is much older than that. To the ancient Romans and Greeks, it represented the god Hermes, also known as Mercury. It was associated with commerce and negotiation, and was even sometimes seen as a symbol of bad things like dishonesty and theft. In fact, there is very little, if any, evidence suggesting that the caduceus symbol has medical or healing-related origins. It's similar to another ancient symbol known as the rod of Asclepius, which depicts a serpent wrapped around a staff and represents the Greco-Roman god of medicine. This is considered a true symbol of medicine and healing, but it's been used interchangeably with the caduceus symbol by many medical organizations, leading to the confusion and misuse that still occurs today. Number 8. American Civil War dates. Wilmer McLean was a grocer whose family lived on a plantation near Manassas, Virginia. As Union forces advanced southward in the summer of 1861, Confederate General P.G.T. Beauregard invaded his farm and set up headquarters there. The first major Civil War battle, known as the Battle of Bull Run, happened along a stream on McLean's property on July 21st of that year. A second encounter, known as the Second Battle of Bull Run, happened in the same place in 1862. The following year, McLean moved his family 120 miles away to a hamlet called Appomattox Courthouse. Confederate Colonel Charles Marshall approached him on April 9, 1865, and asked if he could help arrange a meeting place for General Robert E. Lee and his Union equivalent, Ulysses S. Grant. It seemed as though the man couldn't catch a break from the war, no matter how hard he tried. Lee surrendered that afternoon in McLean's parlor. McLean moved back to Manassas 2 years later. He never bothered to sell the Appomattox property and defaulted on the loan. It was sold at public auction in 1869. Today, the so-called Surrender House is owned by the National Park Service. Basically, McLean saw the beginning and the end of the Civil War even though he moved. Can you imagine being caught up in both the start and end of a war and both things happening on your property? What would you do? Number 7. Man avoids 2 doomed flights. 2 Malaysian Airlines flights made international headlines in 2014 when they both met tragic fates. Just months after Flight MH370 vanished over the Indian Ocean in March of that year, Flight MH17 was shot down over Ukraine. There were no survivors in either incident. A Dutch cyclist named Martin de Jong narrowly avoided becoming a casualty of both doomed flights. He was planning on taking Flight MH370 with his teammates, but they decided against it to avoid a lengthy layover. They took a different plane and arrived safely at their destination. The 29-year-old had another last-minute change of heart after nearly booking a ticket for Flight MH17, when he saw that a different flight was available for much cheaper. The 29-year-old told news outlets that he was struggling to even think about what happened, and that he was extremely grateful to be alive. De Jong also extended his condolences to the families of everyone who died on the flights. In his own words, he said, "I realize how in a split second a decision will decide how your life is going to be. These things don't happen twice." The man's close calls are especially shocking because flying is normally considered very safe. To put it into perspective, a person's chances of dying in a plane crash are roughly 1 in 11 million. Number 6. The first and last soldiers to die in World War I. 16-year-old John Parr was the first of around 750,000 British soldiers to die in World War I. He died from a bullet, which is also what killed 40-year-old George Edwin Ellison, who was the last British soldier to die in the conflict. Parr grew up in North London before shipping off to war. He was shot near the Belgian city of Mons on August 21, 1914, while scouting on his bicycle. At the time, the British were advancing on the region in search of the Germans. The young man was buried on donated land in 1917 after the German government decided to properly honor soldiers from both sides of the war who died in the area. Ellison, who was from Leeds, was shot to death on November 11, 1918, just an hour and a half before the armistice that ended the war went into effect. He was participating in a last-minute advance that took place after it was clear that the conflict was about to end. During the 1920s, Ellison's remains were buried in a plot just yards away from Parr's grave at the St. Symphorian Military Cemetery. Their headstones are facing each other. No one involved in the burial realized that they were placing the last British man to die in the war right across from the first. Number 5. Coworkers learned their sisters. This coincidence isn't exactly historical. In fact, it happened pretty recently, but it's definitely one for the history books, and it's too shocking not to mention. Julia Tonetti and Cassandra Madison became good friends after meeting at the Russian Lady Bar in New Haven, Connecticut, where they began working together in 2013. Both women were adopted from the Dominican Republic and had a tattoo of the country's flag. They had so much in common, both personality and appearance, people often asked if they were sisters. And at some point, the pair seriously began to wonder if it was possible. They compared adoption papers, which said that the women were from different cities and were born with different names. Julia and Cassandra couldn't shake the sneaking suspicion that their connection ran deeper than friendship, but they let the matter go for the time being. In 2018, Cassandra's adoptive mother gifted her a 23andMe DNA kit so she could learn more about her background. She found her birth family and flew to the Dominican Republic for a tearful reunion with her father and siblings. And that was when Cassandra learned that she was one of 2 baby girls that her parents gave up because they couldn't afford to feed them. Around the same time, Julia's friend Molly Sapadin stepped in to help investigate the confusing situation. Molly and Julia's mothers were friends and had adopted them both from the Dominican Republic around the same time. When Molly's paperwork suggested that she might be Cassandra's sister, everyone involved began to wonder if there had been some sort of mix-up. After all, the resemblance between Cassandra and Julia was so strong. DNA proved that Molly and Cassandra were not sisters. The paperwork had in fact gotten mixed up. Julia took a DNA test, and the results proved what the 2 friends seemed to have known all along. Navigating the situation has been tough for Julia, who was uninterested in finding her birth family until she found her long-lost sibling. Now that she has someone to embark on the journey with, she looks forward to meeting and getting to know everyone. Do you know anyone who learned of a shocking connection or a secret after taking an Ancestry DNA test? Tell me all about it in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 4. The deaths of Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams became friends during the Continental Congress in 1775. The Founding Fathers got along famously as they helped to write the American Constitution and traveled throughout Europe representing the newly established country. But their friendship soured due to political differences after Jefferson succeeded Adams as president in 1801. They were estranged for more than a decade before they reconnected and became close again. The pair remained lifelong friends. Both men died on July 4, 1826, as the nation celebrated the 50-year anniversary since it declared independence from Britain. Jefferson, who was 83 years old, passed away at his Monticello estate in Virginia. Adams was 90 years old when he took his last breath in Quincy, Massachusetts hours later. He was unaware that Jefferson had died earlier that day. Number 3. Paul and Esther Grachin. There are roughly 11.7 billion American dollar bills circulating at any given time. The chances of the same bill falling into a person's hands twice are presumably very, very slim, which makes the next coincidence truly remarkable. Paul Grachin was about to pay for a deli purchase when he noticed that the dollar bill in his hand had the name Esther written on it. It was the name of a woman he had gone on several dates with, and he had been thinking about taking things to the next level. Thinking it would be a funny gift to give Esther, he stuffed the dollar back into his pocket and paid with another bill. Paul presented the dollar to his love interest and asked her to become official, but it didn't go very well. Esther looked bothered, but she agreed to become Paul's girlfriend, and things went really well as their relationship grew over the following year. They even got married, and by then, the awkward footing their relationship had started out on had long been forgotten. Paul rediscovered the dollar while the couple moved into a new apartment. He was surprised that Esther had kept it, especially since she had seemed so put off by it. Finally, he asked his wife to explain. She told Paul that when she was 19, she felt stuck in a miserable relationship. The young woman wrote her name on 10 $1 bills, and prayed that one of them would end up in the hands of her future husband. Esther was shocked when Paul gave her the bill 7 years later, and she also didn't want to scare him away during the relationship's fragile early stages, so she said nothing. The couple's story was featured on NPR's This American Life series. During the interview, Esther said that they keep the $1 bill in a frame on their dresser as a reminder that they are soulmates and of the seemingly impossible circumstances that brought them together. Number 2. Two languages, same word. Mbabaram is an Aboriginal language that developed in Australia long before the first English speakers arrived there. Some say that the language is dying, while others already consider it extinct. Modern linguists know very little about Mbabaram despite having searched for speakers, which speaks to its scarcity. Robert Malcolm Ward Dixon, who is a linguistics professor at James Cook University, conducted some of the most thorough research on the language. He found that it had almost no similarities with other nearby tribal languages, making it nearly impossible to trace its origins. The Mbabaram tribe often learned the languages of neighboring tribes, rather than the other way around, because those who tried to learn Mbabaram found it pretty hard. Somewhere along the line, researchers realized that the Mbabaram word for dog is dog. In other words, it sounds the same and has the same meaning as the English word. Considering how Mbabaram and English developed separately and distantly from one another, it's safe to say that this commonality is not the result of one language influencing the other. Instead, it seems to be a huge coincidence. No matter what the culture, we humans love our dogs. Number 1. Four-time lottery winner. Most of us dream of winning the lottery just once, but are realistic enough not to hold our breath because we know that the chances of it happening are extremely slim. One woman's luck defeated statistical odds beyond what anyone thought was possible when she became a 4-time major lottery winner. Her name is Joan Ginther, and she lives in Las Vegas, where some of the country's most famous gambling establishments are just a hop, skip, and a jump away at any given time. Yet she was more interested in doing scratch-offs, to the point where she bought at least 80,000 of them throughout her lottery-playing career. Joan's first major win came in 1993, when she nabbed $5.4 million. Then, in 2006, she won another $2 million from a scratch-off. 2 years later, Joan won $3 million. She received her biggest prize in 2010, when she won $10 million, bringing her total winnings to $20 million. And that's not counting her many smaller victories, which also added up considerably over time. By now, you're probably wishing that you had Joan's luck. But is that really what it was? Many have wondered, including experts who estimated her odds of winning so many times to be 1 in 18 septillion. That's apparently 18 with 24 zeros after it. Despite living in Vegas, all of Joan's winnings came from the Texas lottery. Even more strangely, she bought most of the tickets from the same store in the middle of nowhere. As a Stanford graduate with a PhD in statistics, one can only assume that Joan had her reasons for all this. But she avoids any sort of fame and has never given a detailed interview. Her lifestyle entails a suspicious amount of privacy. Even experienced journalists have failed to track the woman down for a conversation. Reporter Peter Merka speculated that Joan used her mathematical expertise to somehow pitch the odds in her favor after hitting her first jackpot with nothing more than a stroke of blind luck. He theorized that Joan paid attention to the logistics of the lottery tickets she played. Perhaps she figured out how to track shipments, how many prizes were left, and determine which stores were most likely to have the winning tickets. Merka also surmised that Joan spent millions on lottery tickets over the years, and that she had help from a friend. After all, that's a lot of scratch-offs for someone to play on their own. The payout was still worth it. Whatever the serial winner did, deliberate or not, it worked extremely well for her, and it appears as though we may never figure out what her secret was to establishing such statistically unlikely good luck. Have you ever experienced any unusual coincidences? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!